Okay.
I'd like to call us back into order so that we can go into our closed session meeting. So I need a motion to enter close. Does Dr. Merrill need to go first?
No.
I just was going to remind you, Madam Chair, that's a motion to go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
And I've got that to read.
You don't have to read it. You don't have to read it,
I
Madam
don't have to
Chair.
read it, okay.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now in closed session. Dr. Merrill has a
Thank you. Thank
statement.
you. Going to do, which is a 3-hour early release for our schools tomorrow. Information will go out later with greater detail and in a second language as well, but wanted to make the announcement tonight so we could get rolling with that. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right.
At the same reaction.
Hey, good evening again, everyone. We are back in open session now, and I will read the public charge. Welcome to everyone here tonight, and we're glad to have you here. The Orange County Board of Education pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves with the same courtesy toward both school personnel and each other. A moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. In addition to the moment of silence, the board will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. The board asks that you check your cell phones and other electronic devices to be certain that they are either turned off or on vibrate to avoid interruption of the meeting. And at this time, we will stand and have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this time, I ask everyone to take a moment of silence. Okay, thank you all. Next on our agenda is recognitions. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mrs. Purcell. We just wanted to draw everybody's attention to a couple recognitions tonight. The first one is that you, and we might ask you yourself to help lead us off here, that we will be celebrating and recognizing Martin Luther King Jr., the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day next week on Monday, the 15th. We will be out of school, but we will be very much in activities. There will be a range of activities going on, and we want to draw everyone's attention to that. This is, as you and I discussed earlier, this is the coincidence of the birthday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King with the holiday. And many of our student staff and members of the board will be participating in activities, and maybe you can let everyone know some of the schedule of things that you'll be doing on that Monday morning next week.
Well, that Monday morning will start on the steps of the courthouse at 9 o'clock with opening, sort of a celebratory opening. The elected officials will be there, and anyone that they have invited. There is a committee that is putting all this together, and there will be invited people there. The board will, if any board members can attend, they will be there. I will be there. And I know that Sheriff Blackwood will be there, and I'm not sure who's coming from the county commissioners, but I'm sure someone will.
Many of our staff have taken part in helping to organize these activities. We'd obviously like to thank Marie Tate and many other folks from the Northern Orange NAACP and the Martin Luther King Jr. Organizing Coordinating Committee. You can find lists of these activities on social media. We'll be sharing them on social media as well during the course of the week, and that's what we have for Martin Luther King.
There will be a presentation at Mount Zion Church at 10 or 10:30 that morning, I think.
It's scheduled at 10:30 a.m.
10:30. And there will be students participating in that.
Absolutely. Obviously, there was the oratorical contest this past weekend. Those winners have been announced, and this kind of news will be, we'll be sharing this information on social media as more and more of these details become known to us.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Green is going to take care of our second recognition.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Dr. Green.
Good evening, Board Chair,
Chairman, Ms. Purcell, Vice Chair, Mr. Richmond, board members, and Superintendent, Dr. Merrill. I have the distinct pleasure of presenting to you a recognition of a community member who is, I'm encouraged by our community members who donate and present to our school system for our students and our staff. And this evening, I want to share with you a donation by a community member, Sudi Rackison, if I pronounced her name correctly, is a local artist who has lived in Hillsborough for over 30 years. She works in many mediums: oil, cold wax, pen and ink, pencil, collage, and paper mache. She has also written, illustrated, and self-published 2 coloring books for adults, 2 blank journals, a deck of divination cards, any numbers of notebook packs, a series of children's books about her beloved Great Dane, Savannah Blue, and her sisters, Jezebel and Josie Louise, as well as the Savannah Blue activity book in Spanish and English. For many years, Sudi would go to elementary schools with Savannah Blue and read these books to classrooms of children who came to love Savannah as much as she did. She was even a feature on a local television channel when she read at Central Elementary School. We are very pleased to have her donate to our second grade students to receive a copy of our book, Dear Callaroo, Love, Savannah Blue, and the Savannah Blues activity book in Spanish. So she donated enough copies for every second grade student. We are in the process of distributing books to our elementary students now. She was unable to meet with us this evening, so I have a statement to read from her. One of my deep wishes with all my work is to get it out into the world. That is why I'm constantly looking into different forms of reproduction like note cards, fine art prints, stickers, coasters, journals, and books. Last year, I decided to donate the children's book, the activity book, the coloring books, and note cards. I have donated close to 4,000 books and boxes of note cards and coloring books to Lindbergh Comprehensive Cancer Center, Children's Cancer Partners, the Snow Approach, Orange County Rape Crisis Center, El Centro Hispano Kid Zoo, Boys and Girls Club of America, and Orange County Schools. It has been wonderful and fulfilling to know my work is being appreciated and well received, making people smile and touching hearts. It is lovely to be recognized, and I thank you for this commendation, and we thank her for her generous donation to our schools. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Green, and I would also like to add a thank you to Ms. Rackison for her donating these books to our second graders. That's very generous and well appreciated, I am sure, by all of our students and their families. So thank you. Okay. We need to adopt our agenda. So
Motion to
do I-
adopt the agenda?
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, then agenda is adopted. We have public comment. Would you like to read the statement for public comment?
We will now hear public comments. Speakers will be called in the order in which they signed up. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Yielding time to other speakers is not permitted. If a speaker has written materials they would like to share, please hand them to our board clerk, Franklin McCune, and he will distribute them to the board. The purpose of public comment is for the board to hear from members of the public, not to engage in back and forth discussions. Per our policy, board members will not respond to speakers during the public comment session. The board greatly values public feedback and welcomes all comments regardless of viewpoint. However, please be reminded that children are often present at these meetings and that our public comment policy prohibits profanity, vulgarity, and personal abuse of any person. We ask that all comments be civil, respectful, and free of personal attacks. Any speaker who violates our public comment period or otherwise exceeds the bounds of order or decorum will be given a warning. Continued violations may result in the speaker being ruled out of order, at which point we will move on to the next speaker. Our first speaker tonight is Ms. Carrie Hamill.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Hamill, and my family and I are taxpayers in Orange County. I'm here to speak about the math presentation that's on tonight and a stomach ache that I have coming on. Tomorrow, I have the good fortune of going to see 2 of the middle schools in an extracurricular activity. Unfortunately, the children, who are all wonderful, many of them will have been without math teachers or without cohesive math instruction for an extended period of time. It happens to be wonderful county neighbors, families and their students from Gravelly Hill, but that problem here in Orange County is much broader than that. It pains me to know that some children are not getting instruction that they need, especially in something that's developmental that you build upon in math. And so a few questions. What tangible program change, and I suppose a heartfelt, I'm disappointed with the agenda materials. They are flat. My questions to me, I'm sorry, the questions are, what tangible programming changes in math are happening this winter and spring to extend learning in math? Another question, what tangible math programming will be available to all Orange County students this summer? And where are those details? Another matter that's in the agenda is what's happening with the calendaring of professional development. Is the math conference mentioned? Was that on school days when staff were gone? Can there be some coordination? I don't know. Also, there's mention of a study happening. Is there an IRB proposal that the public should know about? And what about the students who are not getting the additional resources out of that study? Where is the catch-up? Finally, the abstract from today, the growth data and lack of growth data in math is noticeably absent. I am more likely to be able to go to the Department of Public Instruction to get a clear understanding of how far behind children are. The Stanford professor is asking us, go to your elected leaders. If children are a year or more behind in math, you have to change the plans. Finally, a word of optimism. I met the new superintendent. Thank you, Dr. Merrill, for your time here. I met the new superintendent, and her background, she's a math teacher. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Okay. We have board comments. Ms. Hauser, we'll start with you tonight.
Sure. First, I just want to say how lovely it was to have so many people in the community come out to meet Dr. Jones. So that felt really wonderful. Second, I wanted to offer a big shout out to the MLK committee and the students who participated in Saturday's oratorical contest. Each student crafted an inspired and impassioned speech around the theme, honoring our past as we celebrate our future. They were all truly remarkable. It was really wonderful, and their families and the churches who helped these students should be incredibly proud. 3 students were selected as winners. Miko Wallace, a 4th grader from Pathways Elementary and Union Grove Church. Brianna Blackwell, a middle schooler from Durham's Neal Middle School and Mount Zion Church. And John Williams IV, a 9th grader from Orange High and Mount Bright Baptist Church. These students will be giving their speeches again at the MLK program on the 15th, so if you'll be there, definitely worth listening to. And I would just like to ask the board if we might consider inviting these students to come give their speeches to us during Black History Month. They were really wonderful, so thank you.
Mr. Atherton?
So one thing I wanted to bring up beyond what Ms. Hauser brought up was right before the holidays, myself and Dr. Moore, I know, got to the pleasure of attending a choral concert with the Cedar Ridge, which they hadn't done in a long time, and it was a wonderful show. It was very interactive, more of a Renaissance kind of presentation. The students were very engaging, and it was just wonderful to hear all the families laughing and engaging, and just wanted to thank Cedar Ridge for the invitation to see that. The only other thing I'll mention is that I'm really looking forward to this coming up, Martin Luther King Day celebration, and spending it with our community. Thank you.
Mr. Richmond?
I don't have much. I just want to say Happy New Year to everyone, and I hope that made some great wishes for this new year.
Ms. Dole?
Thank you. I also got to attend the Madrigal Dinner at Cedar Ridge, and that was really awesome. I hadn't attended it in the past, pre-COVID, and it was just great to see all the different departments, theater, chorus, band, kind of had some Monty Python elements at times. It was really fantastic. And there are so many holiday band, Prism, and other events before our holidays, and Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome back. And also looking ahead to our Martin Luther King Jr. Celebrations this coming weekend, and all the different ways we can participate in recognizing his contributions and stepping up to the challenges that he asked of us. Also grateful that we had a reception for Dr. Jones, and appreciative of all the transition planning that she and Dr. Merrill have been doing together. So looking forward to the spring semester. Thank you, everybody.
Plus one on that last point, I was going to say that too. Really appreciate, Dr. Merrill, the work you've been doing with Dr. Jones to get her ready to take this on. I'm so excited that she's going to be joining us February 1st as our new superintendent. And Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you get a little time off with your people.
I just want to say our schools thrive when we have strong collaboration between the board, school administration, teachers, parents, and the community. So I encourage everyone. Did it go out? Can y'all hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. I encourage everyone to continue engaging with us and providing feedback through email and public comment. Your input is invaluable to us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I would like to say how much I enjoyed the Orange High School choral concert before Christmas. I was there, and I think one of the highlights was when parents found out that their children were singing a solo that they didn't know about, and I thought that's pretty cool. They didn't tell. But it was as awesome as always. And I would also like to wish everyone a Happy New Year, welcome you here tonight, and so glad that we had the turnout that we had to come and see Dr. Jones and meet with Dr. Jones. And we are very excited to get her here. We hate to see Dr. Merrill go, but we have a few more weeks with Dr. Merrill, so you'll have to put up with us just a little bit longer. And but we have enjoyed having him here and appreciated his leadership. I too would just reiterate one more time that the festivities this weekend on Monday for Martin Luther King Day, if you can participate, it's a wonderful opportunity, and I hope that we see a lot of people at the venues that will be going on. So thank you, everyone. And Dr. Merrill, do you have any comments that you would like to make?
Just one, and it's not as upbeat as all your comments were, but quantify a very, very early concern about our upcoming budget development process. I think it's going to be tough. And I'll probably leave it at that. We continue to lose students every year. And that's all. Thanks. So a lot of work that will go on in January and then certainly over the next couple of months, but thanks.
Okay. We know that it's going to be tight, and knowing what we dealt with last year, we know that we're still in tight constraints here, and we will undertake it. Okay. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve items on consent?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Consent agenda is approved. And we will move into our work session with our curriculum department with a math update.
Good evening again, and we are excited. It is a long time coming to present our math program and to share with you the great work that our staff are doing in the areas of math. We recognize the challenges that we have across our nation with regard to math teachers, with regard to feeling challenges of COVID and other places, and just regard to everyone's feeling with respect to math. Also being a former math teacher at the middle school level, here it is always disheartening when people say they don't do math. We never say we don't read, but we're quick to say that. And so changing sometimes just that mindset has been even a greater challenge. But I'm pleased this evening to present to you some people who work very hard to change the mindset of not only our students, but our staff. And I'm very pleased and very proud to present our math coaches who work with their teachers in their school. They work with not only building their capacity around math, but building the capacity of others, and who heads the helm of our math program, Dr. Gammon. So I'll bring this extraordinary team forward.
All right, thank you, Dr. Green, Chair Purcell, Vice Chair Richmond, members of the board, Dr. Merrill. Grateful for the opportunity to be here this evening to present to you. I'm especially grateful for the wonderful math coaches, math teachers, district math facilitator that are here. So grateful for them for the time that they put in and the time that they're going to put in this evening to share about celebrations as well as challenges. And also grateful to our community for elevating the needs that we have and areas that we know and knowing that this is an opportunity to partner together to continue to grow and to get better. So I'm grateful for that. As you saw in last month's update about the beginning teacher support program, we are aligning our curriculum and instruction decisions across the organization with the Orange County Schools instructional framework. The foundation of our instructional framework is a collective commitment to build teacher efficacy, and more importantly, collective teacher efficacy to impact student achievement and to retain our staff. One of the three pillars of this instructional framework is ensuring that we are making data-informed decisions at every level of the organization. The abstract and the presentation shared prior to this evening provided much more detail about our data analysis process, including different data points that were used in the summertime to build a plan of action for K-12 math this school year. You noticed in the data that there are many celebrations from this past school year, as well as continued challenges and needs across all of our schools. In addition to this quantitative data, we know that qualitative data, especially input from our teachers, from our administrators, from our math coaches, will continue to be key for us to meet the goals that we have. As you can see on the slide here, there are three areas of focus that we are working diligently on this year. First are supporting those processes and building that efficacy within our professional learning community. building the capacity of our wonderful math coaches to support teacher advocacy, and continuing to support our multi-tiered systems of support with a focus on improving our intervention structures across schools. So that first area of focus, professional learning communities, alignment of district support with the work of schools matters. Again, I'll say that alignment of district support with what our schools are working on matters. And so our principals have shared more in depth during their school improvement presentations about their goals around professional learning communities and that those are a priority within their school improvement plan. We are grateful to you, the board, for your commitment and your support beginning last year with our partnership with Solution Tree to reignite that collective learning and that collaborative learning culture. But there are challenges. Through one-on-one and collective coaching with our Solution Tree partners, feedback from our teachers and administrators about the PLC journey that we're on, and ongoing observations. We've noted during the first semester of this school year that we have individual schools and grade levels where they are moving the needle on building collective efficacy through those PLC commitments, but we also acknowledge that there are challenges due to staffing of math positions and limited coaching support at the secondary level. Also, since 2020, there has been a shift in emphasis at the state level as well as at the district level with legislation that has required professional development and a focus in the area of literacy. I am thrilled that math is being elevated this evening because we need to prioritize math as well, and I'm excited to see that happening at the state level moving forward as well. So knowing this, some next steps with professional learning communities is we've really worked to identify 4 very tight areas that we want to be focused on. And we really want to focus, number one, on building that collective teacher efficacy through consistent meeting structures with our teachers, with our math coaches that are happening in the buildings weekly. Our second area of focus is really spending time unpacking essential standards, the most essential standards that our students need to learn, all of our students. The third area is developing common formative assessments. All right, those common formative assessments are focused on those most essential standards that all students should be taught. And then finally, what are we doing with that data? So that last tight area is through analysis of those CFAs, we then are reteaching and providing that support for our students. And so at this time, I'm going to ask that Mr. David Gaddy, a math teacher from Orange High School, as well as Miss Brittany Pinckney, our middle grades math coach, they are going to come forward to share a little bit about the work and the experience that they're engaging in around this PLC work. So you guys come on up.
Good evening, board. Purcell, if you had told me 5 years ago that I'd be right here talking to you about this, I'd have called you crazy.
I could have said the same thing.
Appreciate that. Orange High School is a math department, much like many other schools. We've been through it. Since 2020, you saw a tidal wave coming after that. And so we don't pass the buck on that, we own that. We knew it was coming, and you kind of see it rolling through in our data now. And for us, a turnover of half of our department and then trying to hire competent teachers was a task in and of itself. And so finally, after a couple of years of comings and goings, we made it out to the other side. We have a rock solid staff: Bogus, Blackburn, Campos, Ahmed, Smith, Parker, and Karasi and Collins. And we finally got this team together. And so our first focus as a team was the PLC group and creating that culture of trust. Because without that, we couldn't be a team. And that trust and taking that responsibility for our team flows down to our students. And so we needed to make that atmosphere, and so we did. Regardless of how we felt about things, we knew we'd come to the table and debate things and get through things and still be friends out on the other side. And so that was last year's task, and we're stronger than ever. And so out of this trust, we began over the summer with Mr. Brian Parker and Karasi and Campos, Blackburn, and myself of making common formative assessments for our Math 1 department. And now we knew it needed to be more. And so with the money that was appointed to us from the board, we were able to contract a math coach, Christine Kreider, who is coaching us in our already great Math 1 department into a different level of things. With this opportunity, we blew up the entire Math 1 curriculum. And we started from the ground up, and you can see it on the screens. We started with a blank slate, and we found the 7 to 8 things that we knew that we needed to cover. And then over a Saturday for about 3 to 4 hours of debating back and forth and wrestling with things and really getting our boots down into the muck of it, we came up with everything that was under those headings, and then all of this, like not just essential standards, which is what you're going to talk about, but all the standards that go into those things. And so for a team of mostly beginning teachers, it was super necessary. Hard work, but necessary work. And so this team, along with Coach Kreider, they went from what you see on the screens now to have created a pacing guide for next semester. And now they have put all of the topics in there, and now they're working on common and formative assessments together during their PLC times. And now they're also building a viable curriculum that we can give any teacher that were to walk into Orange High School on day one and say, this is what we do, let's partner together and do it. And that's not to streamline the curriculum because it's there, but it's to say, this is what we do as a team. Now you take it and you lead it with your own style and creativity as well. The curriculum and the CFAs are there to compare data together to see, why did your class do better than mine? Why did your class do better than mine on this thing or that thing? And we come together, and now we can make use of our Panther time, our intervention time, and all of our students can get different looks into things from different teachers. And so it's about creativity, it's about diversity of teachers, it's about all of those things, but especially creating competency within our teachers and be able to trust each other and go through those hard decisions together. And so not only is that for Math 1, but now Math 1 is the standard for which we will build on for Math 2, for Math 3, and Math 4, and beyond. So this is important work, and it starts in the PLC side of things. And then from the PLC is where we go to the essential standard stuff, which is what Brittany will cover. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Brittany Pinkney, and I wanted to just, again, thank you all for taking the time to listen to all the wonderful things we're lifting up in math in our district. I want to reiterate a point that Dr. Gammon made about this being a journey, because I feel like that really captures the work that we're doing in our PLC. It is a journey, it is a process. And a part of that, when we're trying to go through and we're answering these questions, our PLC, the work that we're doing has 4 critical questions that we're trying to answer. I'm going to be talking to you all about the first 2. We'll go in a little bit more about the first one that Mr. Gaddy was talking to you all, and that one deals with what do we want our students to know? And I feel like that in itself goes into this analogy of this journey that we're on. We want to know where we're trying to take our students. And so with that, in our PLCs, our teachers are working together to unpack the standards. And they're doing that by taking the standards and breaking them down from the most simplistic part of the standard to the most complex. And we're making them into I can statements. And then the teachers are putting these I can statements on a ladder, and that these ladders are from increasing levels of difficulty as well. And by doing this work, what the teachers are able to do is further their understanding of the standards as well. Like we've been talking about a lot, there's been a lot of turnover, a lot of change, a lot of newness. So this type of work is extremely important for all of our teachers, and especially our new teachers, our beginning teachers who are coming in. After we work with the getting our standards unpacked, we talk about the pacing and where we're going to actually assess, at what point we'll actually assess these standards. And then we discuss the strategies that we'll actually use to teach the standards. A second part of our work deals with what we want our students to know. And so with that, that's where we start trying to make our CFA, our Common Formative Assessment. And the way that we do this is we are focusing on making sure that our CFAs have ranging levels of difficulty of questions. So it's not just the simple fact of doing a CFA is not enough. It's not, the CFA has to be rigorous. And that's one thing that we're really trying to make sure that we're moving towards, is making sure that our CFAs have, majority of the questions are DOK2. They're more rigorous questions, and they're not just assessing students at a basic level, because then we'll have students passing a CFA in class that's at a basic level, and then we'll be confused when they go take another test by the state and they're not doing well. So we're really beefing up and trying to increase the intensity of the assessments that the students are taking in class. When we're making our CFAs, currently what we're doing is we're putting our CFAs on a Google form, and we're having this data pop up on a spreadsheet. And what this allows for our teachers to do is have a quicker way of assessing how our students are performing. If you all can see on your screen, we have an example on the left side. There's an example of a report card that the teachers are able to have access to. And it automatically pops up in the spreadsheet that they're using. And what this does is it breaks down their data from the CFA that the students took by the different student groups. And so teachers are able to go through and identify what student groups how student groups are performing, and what are the areas that they need to divert more of their attention to, which is extremely important when we're talking about resources and how we're going to allocate those resources for our students. After we have identified what groups the students need the more of the support, then coaches, for middle grades right now, it's currently me, will work with the teachers and try to figure out how to best help the teachers provide that support. And we're currently, as a department, all the coaches are getting more support with helping teachers with coaching cycles. And that's how we're learning how to better support our teachers in the classroom. And with that being said, this actually leads me to Ms. Parker, who's going to talk to you all about our second focus, which is building the capacity of our math coaches.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us and having us here to talk about math. And I have the opportunity to work with this amazing group of coaches and teachers who are extremely dedicated. And my role is to support them and figure out how we can support them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the support that we have provided working with a partnership with UNCG. We started in 2022 and 23, and we partnered with them. And they first just came on board and started like visiting our schools and listening to the coaches and finding out what support that we could provide. And so through this partnership, we continue to actively participate in schools. We participate in coaching cycles. They come and do monthly PDs. They come and participate and do monthly meetings with our math coaches. And so since our math coaches serve multiple roles, they're interventionists, they work as MTSS, they also serve in classrooms as teachers if needed. We needed to figure out a way to provide shorter coaching cycles so that they could address the needs of more teachers. We often did coaching cycles that were over 2 or 3 weeks. And with UNCG, we've talked about how we could provide like more feedback on and quicker feedback to teachers so that we can serve the variety of needs in the school buildings. Our coaches were actually asked to present in North Carolina's math conference on the coaching work that they have been doing in our school buildings. Our goal for this school year is to build a coaching network for our coaches. We did a lot of professional development last year on coaching cycles, and they have the PD, they know how to do coaching cycles, but right now it's like, how do we provide them as coaches with support and feedback so that they can do quality coaching within the school buildings? And so Jessica and Sydney is going to come and talk. They're 2 of our coaches, and they're going to talk about a coaching network of support where they partner with each other and they provide feedback with each other. And then after that, Sherry Callaghan's going to come and talk about some data that we collect from students so that we have feedback ourselves as coaches, and we can provide that feedback from students to teachers as well. Good evening. As many people have said, thank you again so much for having us tonight to allow us to share about the work that's happening in our buildings, which we're really excited about as a math coaching team. I'm Sydney Bates. I'm the math coach at River Park, and Jessica Norris, the math coach at Grady Brown. We're going to talk a little bit more about the partnerships that we've established in coaching pairs and coaching teams as a result of this professional development work with UNCG. So as Jennifer mentioned, for the past year and a half, we've been working on our own professional development each month as math coaches, which has been super empowering. It's really, really relatable to what we are doing in classrooms and has allowed us to be able to put into practice immediately the things that we're learning and growing together to do that work with. So the first year was really about researching, learning, discussing, and analyzing those best practices for coaching, specifically mathematics coaching, which has been really unique about this professional development relationship with UNCG. Now, this year, has been more of the application piece, which has been really awesome to practice and to try. We know we learn best by doing, and that's what we've been able to do this year. And one of the things that we've done with UNCG is establish coaching pairs. So Jessica and myself are a coaching partnership that has allowed us to collaborate to do the best learning together. So we've visited one another's school buildings. We've done collaborative observations together, coaching cycles together, and been able to talk about the work that we're doing, to share our problems of practice, to share advice, to just be a listening ear, but to develop together professionally through that has been a really powerful experience for us.
And I can share as a baby coach, so I have a couple years of experience under my belt now, that working with Sydney and working at a different school and going and observing other classrooms and then kind of brainstorming the goals that we might set for this teacher has been really powerful for me and a great learning tool. It also provides kind of a different lens and perspective when somebody from the outside comes in and takes a look and then kind of shares their ideas. It might give you ideas that maybe you didn't have, or maybe tell you like, this teacher's doing this and maybe they could work on this. And so having those different perspectives and those lenses allows us to be better coaches for our staff. I know I definitely take away a lot of stuff from Sydney when I go back to my school. It's also great to walk into a school and see different ways of doing the curriculum, different math practices. And one of the things, you know, being a coach, there's only one of me at school. So it's also great to have kind of a partner in crime. We do have matching shirts that we wear occasionally. And so it's kind of nice to have that partner that you can share your successes with. And then sometimes you might need to share a moment where you were having a hard day and maybe didn't get what you needed to get out of that coaching cycle. And so one of the things I like to always say is that working together is always better here in Orange County. And it definitely will make us a stronger team here in the county.
So just to follow up with what Sydney and Jessica were saying, I'm Sherry. I am one of the math coaches at Eflin Cheeks. And we are learning so much through our work with UNCG. We're continuing to hone our craft as coaches, but we're continuing to really focus on student learning and student engagement. As my colleague said earlier, you learn best by doing, and we know that's true for children as well. And we really are beginning to focus on student engagement in the math classroom, and working to see that students see themselves at the center of the classroom and that they are engaged in the work of solving and doing mathematics. So in our coming sessions, we'll be working more with student surveys. We've talked about it a little bit, and I've had the opportunity to use a survey at Eflin Cheeks. We're doing a task with the teacher. We presented the survey to the students prior to the task and then after the task to see how their vision of themselves as mathematicians changed. So we're really excited to use these surveys to provide feedback to the teachers so they can reflect on what was different between the two surveys, but also to help with instructional decisions in the math classrooms. And as we all know, kids learn through doing, and if we can help them see themselves as doing math, then they will be more successful later on.
I'm going to talk about our last area of focus this year is on the intervention support. During the last few years, there is more of a need to address foundational math skills and concepts. Therefore, we researched several interventions and supports that we could utilize to meet the needs of students. We have used PRC 189 funds for after-school tutoring at both the elementary and the middle school level, and we're actively seeking ways to increase during the school day tutoring at the middle school level to help with some of the after-school sports and schedules so that we can have more students participate in the tutoring. For secondary, we continue to focus on designing the intervention block to provide students with certified math support during that time. And we've also purchased Math 180 at the middle school level, and we continue to work on utilizing Math 180 as a Tier 3 intervention. Over the past 4 years, four math coaches and myself have participated in math recovery professional development. It's a Tier 3 elementary intervention. We've seen a lot of success with building foundational skills for students in math recovery. Our intention is to continue to collect data about its effectiveness and continue to make a plan about how we can continue to implement math recovery and the math recovery concepts within the elementary schools. Right now, we're focusing more of K2, and our intention is to continue to focus to 3-5 as well as some fraction work. So Stephanie is going to come and share her experience in providing direct support to students for math recovery.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I am one of the math coaches at New Hope Elementary. I am excited to share with you about the learning that has occurred for our students and for us through math recovery. Intense intervention in early numeracy, oh my gosh, thank you so much, has been a need in elementary schools, and our other resources were just not meeting the needs of all of our learners. So I'm going to share just a story about a student I worked with in math recovery. I began working with a kindergarten student at the end of April last school year. At that time, the student could rote count to 6, identify only 5 numerals, and make finger patterns to 5. She should have been counting to 100, naming numbers to 20, and able to supervise spatial patterns up to 6. Currently, the student counts past 40, identifies numerals to 40, knows many addition facts, and can solve other addition problems with the more sophisticated strategy of counting on. She has moved from high risk to moderate risk, and I predict that she will be grade level by the end of this year. So I'm really excited. She often remarks on how she loves math and she has a big brain in math. Part of the rapid growth we are seeing in students is because of the content knowledge we are gaining as participants. This course has reinforced that math teaching and learning relies on having a deep understanding of the content. We are able to see how numeracy builds across grade levels and understand the skills that are not necessarily reflected in the North Carolina standard course of study, but are critical to students. Additionally, as a cohort together from OCS, we have been able to discuss how to implement these ideas into core instruction and integrate with the Bridges curriculum. We are hopeful to enroll in more courses and through certification, be able to lead professional development for all of the teachers so that we can scale the impact of math recovery. Thank y'all.
So we will continue to look for ways that we have had success with some interventions that we've recently done, and we continue to look for ways that we can increase the use of those interventions across the district. To elevate math in Orange County, we had a math leadership team several years ago. We are reforming the math leadership team to be a K-12 leadership team. That team will be composed of teachers, coaches, administrators, and district level staff. And the purpose of that team is to provide feedback about math instruction, curriculum resources, and professional development. And we are hoping that math leadership team will also lead professional development within our school buildings. So that could be an opportunity for regular professional development from teachers that you teach with. We are working with Human Capital and the Beginning Teacher Support Coordinator to recruit math teachers. We're also utilizing our partnership with UNCG in communicating with them. We did get one, through our partnership with UNCG, we did get a teacher at Orange High School. So they sent that teacher our way. So we continue to use those partnerships that we're creating with local universities through grants to recruit teachers. And now that Dr. Gammon and I are not serving dual roles, we are working with administrators and coaches on core instruction and intervention walkthroughs to get feedback from the teachers and decide exactly what we need to do for next steps in the support that they need in the school buildings and within PLCs. So lastly, we would love an opportunity to engage and work around math with you about progressions and what an experience looks like for students during a potential future student achievement committee meeting.
Thank you all. I do want to say thank you again to the team for this evening. I do appreciate the grace with time, but we know this is really critically important for us to be able to share the excellent work that's going on, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Dr. Gammon, I don't have a question, more of a comment. I think it was slide 24 where it talked about some challenges with the coaches serving multiple roles in buildings and being tasked with covering vacancies. So my comment is, as we navigate the dynamics within our schools, it's essential for me to recognize the invaluable role our coaches play. Coaches serve as not only mentors and motivators, but also as problem solvers, helping to address evolving needs of both educators and students. So I just want to personally thank our math coaches for everything that you're doing.
Sarah?
Yeah, this was great. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. I'll just ask one question. I might have another one later. I had a question about whether we're doing any additional, like bringing in any additional math tutors for secondary, for like middle or high school, because what I, like, when I've looked into the like high dosage tutoring models, like secondary literacy, really hard, not a lot of great evidence of successful programs, but there are some strong programs for like supporting math skills in secondary. So is that something that's
Yeah, so that's definitely, I do know that through the flexibles, like grant funds that principals have been able to use, they have been able to use some of those funds to bring in some additional support in that way. I can't speak specifically to how many folks would be across those schools, and I'm thinking more high schools specifically. I do know that we have posted an RFP within the last year. Now, this was prior to Jennifer and I working at Gravely last year. That RFP did not end up bringing in any results of a tutoring service. We're really trying to find more in-person tutoring support that can happen really during the school day, especially. She did note PRC 189 funds that is tutoring that's happening at the secondary level. One challenge that we've noted with that is those funds can only be used after hours. And so being able to keep students after school, the transportation component with that, it makes it very tricky. So I do know that moving forward, our goal, we do have some additional funding there for this second semester because we've not been able to fill one of those math coach positions. If any of those remaining funds can be used for tutoring, it would be placed at the secondary level for that. And so that is a goal in the immediate with other prospects on the horizon, because we have started partnerships at the K-5 level, as you all are aware, and then how can we start to expand those beyond this year would be a next step for us. Yeah.
Ms. Dole?
Thank you. Thank you so much for this, the different components of this presentation. There's a lot going on in math across the district. And I do know that the vacancies have really, made people not be able to do what their primary role would have been, and how challenging that can be. I really appreciated seeing the development of like the pacing guide and all the teamwork that went into that. I appreciate Mr. Gaddy telling us how y'all at Orange High School have kind of gotten to the other side and feel really solid about staff, and it's good for us to hear about that positive development that is gradual as we recover from that season of heavy vacancies. I'm curious with the pacing guides, do some levels of math have district-wide pacing guides, or are schools figuring it out at individual schools? Or what is our history with pacing guides in the different math curriculum?
Yeah, so I can say at the high level that we did spend time the summer before last where we had a large like district-wide unpacking of standards where we built out curriculum guides and maps. Those are areas that we're trying to refine year over year. Jennifer may want to provide more detail about the work. Yeah.
Thank you.
So at K-8 level, we had a lot of representation across the variety of schools when we created those curriculum maps. And then our coaches have a tendency to get feedback and we adjust those on a regular basis. 9-12, Dr. Gammon and I have had conversations about, we did not have, when we created those curriculum maps a couple of years ago, that's when we had the vacancy with some of the teaching positions. And so they exist for 9-12 as well, but what Orange High School kind of went and looked from their view, changes that we would make, and then we're come around and look at the pacing guide that they've just created and meet with Cedar Ridge and have those conversations at the end of the year as well about like comparing high schools. They do want to work together. It's just we have had lots of turnover, and so we're working in the 9-12 space, but they do exist in the K-8 space district-wide.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Hauser?
Yeah, first I want to thank you. I feel like I'm looking at the math rock stars. You all by reputation. We hear from teachers about you. We hear from parents about you, how you are changing lives. So thank you so much for coming out. It was kind of nice the way you did it. It was nice to hear from each one of you and the different perspectives that you bring. The task is daunting. The task is daunting, and especially with the staff shortage. And I'm really worried about middle school. I think the word genius comes to my mind with what you're doing at Orange High School with Ms. Kreider and the pacing and stuff is just fantastic. One of the things that I'm not, and by the way, the examples that you were putting up, I couldn't do those. So, but I do have the numbers with me, and the disparities are very concerning to me. And we're not, for some reason, we're not getting to our Hispanic, our Black, our economically disadvantaged, and especially our English language learners and our EC students. And I was just curious, because now remember, I'm not an educator, right? So I don't really know what I'm talking about. But what I've been told is to ask about teaming math teachers with EC teachers and ESL teachers and other teachers to make the curriculum materials more accessible to students of different needs. And I was just curious if that's something that you all are doing. And it sounds like a way to kind of broaden the number of people that are supporting our kids in math. So I was just curious how if that's a reasonable thing to be looking at.
Yeah, so I can't say that there is direct work that's happening right now, and I'll use the example, our literacy coaches are pairing with like our EL specialists to do that type of work. I believe that what you're seeing here from the math side is that we see that work and the progress that's happening in that work. That would be a next step space for us to step into. But I do think that we would be remiss to say, I think from Ms. Parker, our perspective. So thinking of the work that we were tasked with even this past year, going over and serving at Gravelly Hill, a space where there were heavy vacancies, especially in the area of math, that has created a situation where we now are stepping back into this space this year, and we're trying to catch up with that type of work. And so everything that you're saying is spot on. There is collaborative and collective work that happens through the PLC process across every school where EC teachers are working with math or literacy teachers. That's a part of the co-planning process. That's a part of unpacking standards. That happens across the board. Now, can we build even more time to do that work? Absolutely. And I think that's the direction that we would want to move forward.
Great,
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And if I may add to the question here, this past summer, the EC office provided training to administrators on different models of co-teaching and also continues to do that. So we're looking at co-teaching models that take place in all the content areas. And so you will see some pockets of it here. We do encourage schools and administrators to take advantage of the different models that will indeed impact many of our student groups.
Great, great.
And I can just add that Emily Lewis and I have had multiple conversations. We've actually purchased a resource to talk about language in the math classroom and how we're going to utilize that at the middle school level to provide support to the teachers. And so that's something that we are going to roll out in the spring this year. We just got our resources in, thanks to Tanya, in December. And so that's something that we are looking at and focusing on. And we do have lots of inclusion classrooms, our teachers that are co-teaching with other teachers and really trying to support students in math.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
So, Ms. Parker talked about our UNCG partnership, and the one that Orange High School got was Mr. Campos, and we ended up creating one of the questions I asked him in the middle of the hallway as interview was, would you be interested in doing an ELL Math 1? And the answer was yes. And we have an ELL Math 1, a year-long program for that. And so that's been done. And if you look at our data from the past EOC, while it doesn't look great overall, one of the increases we had was in our ELL students. So I was like, you're hired forever, like, go for it. And then one of the things we're trying to improve is co-teacher cohesiveness and having those relationships with those co-teachers long-term for as long as we can so they can build their partnership, and that ends up affecting our students long-term as well.
Fantastic.
Can I ask a follow-up question? It might be for you, Mr. Gaddy. Do y'all, and this is probably different at different schools, like, is there time built in your schedule where you can go observe each other? Like, is that, I know there's only a certain number of planning periods. I'm curious if that sort of thing is possible.
From a high school level, it's different for our high schools, and it depends on if we're covering and things like that, if we're taking on an extra class, 4 blocks. And, but there should be time built in, and it just depends on timing. And one of the goals that we'll have next year for all of us is, if we have enough teachers staffed, is being able to go around and not only observe each other as math teachers, but observe teachers across core subjects as well. So.
I was just gonna say, I'm not gonna go there. At the elementary level,
Yes.
We use.
That way our listeners at home can hear you.
At the elementary level, at least at New Hope, we use that planning time to meet within our PLCs, but then we work out times for peer observation through, I may cover a room for a teacher to go see another classroom, and then we will debrief after, or a lit coach may help out and cover a room so I can travel with someone else, or a beginning teacher mentor may help out in that way. So we create time magically instead of it just necessarily being there.
Cool. So that the you as a coach, like recognizing the skills of the teachers on the grade or in the school and creating those opportunities.
And I will also say that, like, the K-5 coaches advocated like that for last year as well. They had lots of beginning teachers, and they travel. They take, our principals have been supportive of taking teachers to different schools. So they may go see a kindergarten teacher at a different school as well. So it's not just within their school building. They advocated for that need, and they helped create the schedule so that, and they actually went to the other school and visited that as well. So that's something that we've done recently within the last year.
One thing just to add, that actually happened this week or last week for me, but to highlight the partnerships that we have within PLCs and with administration as well has been super helpful to allow that type of work to happen. But in a PLC last week, there was a teacher, or a couple weeks ago, there was a teacher that wanted to view one of her colleagues because of a discussion that had come across with instruction and how it was being delivered. And so we were able to do that together. And so working with administration, we were able to find coverage so that we could have that learning experience together and then debrief afterwards. So within the PLC work, that was forefront to being able to see instruction across classrooms, and I think super beneficial. So if we can make time, which we should, and working with partnerships to do that has been something that's been really empowering.
Awesome. Thanks, Gail.
Mr. Atherton.
First, thank you all. I know, as y'all mentioned, we're going on a journey and learning a lot. One of the questions that I had, after, reading through the material and listening is, how are we looking at, Mr. Gatti said it, hey, these are the students I have, I've got to teach them where they're at versus I can't go back in time and fix it. But how are we looking at pushing, here's common issues we see, maybe that should change some of the learning in the earlier, because they're all built on foundations. So, and I heard about the district getting together, but how do we take advantage? You know, we talk about on the reading side, we're looking at that, and how do we push those back and get them in the younger ages so they get those strong foundations. So when they get in the upper classes, they're not struggling. So just curious if y'all are looking at that as part of one of the tools we look at.
Yeah, so we're kind of starting that's one reason why we looked at math recovery in that K-2 space. We really need students walking out of second grade close to proficiency in mathematics. It will make a huge difference, and that's why we originally looked at math recovery, because it provides those foundational skills for students so that when they leave second grade, they are ready to enter third grade and be successful in third grade. And so one thing we are doing is we're thinking more of like this K-2 support and what we can do. So it's preventative. It's not waiting until students get to sixth grade and they need more support. Brittany has been instrumental in this as well, in talking about strategies that students are learning in fourth and fifth grade, and how do we then provide sixth grade teachers with those strategies that they're using so that there is this communication and students can, we're bridging this gap so that they walk into a sixth grade classroom and they can still use the strategies that they were exposed to in fourth and fifth grade, but build on them to become proficient at a sixth and seventh grade level. So Brittany is taking the initiative at the middle school level to think about what instruction looks like in fourth and fifth grade, and how can we take those and utilize those strategies in sixth, seventh, and eighth. To David Gaddy also, like I have the privilege, not currently, recently, but come into their PLC, and that's often the question they ask, like, how can I backtrack this concept or this skill? What did student learn? What did this look like in seventh grade? What does it look like in Math 1? So PLCs are having those conversations and thinking about like, how can they build this understanding? It also goes to ladders of proficiency, because when you're thinking about the ladders, like you have your standard here, but what's below that is what skills and concepts they needed before. And so we are doing that work, and a lot of the coaches and a lot of that work's happening within PLCs. And we hope that as we develop the math leadership team, it becomes more systematic across the district, where we can identify those areas and then communicate those areas in a systematic way.
Thank you. I have one follow-up. So a lot of this, reading, talking about reading, parents can sit down with their child to go through reading. Math has changed, right? And you can read the book and say, I don't know what they're talking about. So as y'all are looking through this to work with the students, have y'all started thinking about how can I enable the parent that can help and do this? Because I've talked to a lot of parents that say, hey, my child brought this home and I physically cannot help them because I don't understand what they're doing. This is not how I learned it, or, hey, I can use my calculator and see if it's correct. But I know that's a different problem, but when you think about the whole child and where their opportunities are, that's one. But have y'all gotten to that point of thinking about how do we get back to the home to enable the parents to facilitate, or guardians?
Yes, that we have thought about that. And I'll be honest, we used to do family nights with Ms. Plefko, and they were fabulous. And we've talked about, like, post-COVID, that we need to get back to those family nights. Each 9 weeks, we used to teach the concepts and skills, and it was great. And the other piece of that is the coaches have often talked about making a website with videos of strategies, because they often send them to the parents. So that is on our list. I'm still kind of working on last year's list, to be honest, but that's like the next thing where we hope to kind of get the parent piece involved.
All right, thank you.
Can I make a suggestion on that, on the website thing, which I love? Like, y'all don't need to make the videos, obviously. It's like the videos that the teachers are, you have them, right? It's the like 5-minute, 3-minute video that is being shown in class, right? Okay.
And blueprints.
Exactly, right.
It's just Jess and I and one of their teachers' voices.
Mr. Richmond, you have anything? I have a couple of comments. Number one, thank you so much for what you're doing with the PLCs, because I'm thrilled to see that PLCs are back where they are getting back to where they were at one time. And I know that David talked about doing CFAs in Math 1. Are CFAs being given all the way through on a regular basis, 3 through 12?
Right. So the CFAs would be, those are being developed within the schools. So like, those are
Yeah.
like grade level teams that will be developing them. That's a part of that tight area focus this year. And so like, yes, that is happening, but there is still room to grow there across every school. Those are being actively developed as we go. And it'd be nice to see going into this summer, having time to actually continue to build for this next school year. When you're outside of that school window, that's going to be a next step for us too. So yes, they're being built.
But they're being built, but are they being given this year, or
Yes,
they're
yes, they're being built and given. Yes. K-12.
K-12?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that was just not quite clear. So, but I appreciate all the work that you all are doing, and I know that it's very hard work. I mean, and your time is spread thin, I know. So it is much appreciated and much noticed as to what you're trying to do to get our math program up. And as they said, math has changed so much. My 7th grade math grandson, I couldn't help if I had to, and he knows it because he tells me I don't know what I'm doing because it's not what he's been taught, and it's not. And so thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate it. Okay, update on federal programs?
Absolutely. And before we move into our federal programs and presentation, I'm going to say, yes, Ms. Hauser, they are rock stars. And that's why we're very proud of the work that they're doing and continue to do. And we hope to have another opportunity to come and dig a little deeper into some of the items here. So thank you. Well, I am also very pleased to have our Director of Federal Programs, and I thank you again for providing this position, because you will, as noted in her abstract, that it's more than just Title I. And this evening, Ms. Wagner wants to present the work done in the other titles. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Wagner. Thank you. In one moment, she will be providing.
Good evening. Thank you for the patience as he's working out some technical difficulties so I can share the presentation with you. Thank you, Chair Purcell, board members, Dr. Merrill, for allowing me to present tonight. You've received a lot of information about federal programs over the summer and throughout the school year, but this is just to provide a brief update as to where we are right now and our next steps moving forward. And I really wanted to highlight tonight the other programs besides Title I. When we hear federal programs, we talk about Title I most of the time, but they're between Titles II, III, IV, and then our CSI low graduation rate program. We also have a lot of other opportunities within Orange County schools as well. So within Title I, again, we've had several updates on the budgets for that over the summer, planning with that. This year, something new that was done is a comprehensive budget plan that we worked with each school to create that based on their school improvement plan, which was not anything different than they had done before, but really looking at the expected impact on student outcomes and how are we going to monitor that moving forward. So it's not just that we're spending the money on this, is it having the intended impact that we wanted it to? And so that is our plans for the spring and into the summer as we get our data to come back to see, did it have that impact? And if it did, great, we're going to keep moving forward with it. If not, we need to adjust. We need to step back, look, and adjust from there. We've also been doing monthly Title I meetings with all the school principals, Title I principals. Kevin Smith came and joined us one meeting to talk about our parent and family engagement. And really, that's a big point, focus for us is our parent and family engagement right now. That's one of the big tenets of Title I, and we really need to try, especially now that we're coming out of COVID and moving on to that, is to really amp up our efforts to reach out to our parents to make sure that we're getting their input and their participation in our schools. The next steps with Title I is to conduct a comprehensive needs assessment at each school level. I'm working with those teams to look at the data analysis and to do those budget analyses and then to make our plans moving forward. And then we're also going to do the same process at the district level, not just with Title I, with all the titles, in order to do the same thing. So again, we're still monitoring the impact on student achievement across all of our programs. I provided information for you here on just what positions are currently being provided at the school level. These are with the school allocations. Their school level teams decided to fund these positions, so that's what they're funding there. We only have 2 positions that we're funding at the district level right now. Those are not 100% positions, so part of my salary and then part of our math facilitator salary is funded out of that. Title II is about preparing our teachers, and you have heard Dr. Gammon and Ms. Rhonda Woods present to you on our wonderful beginning teacher program, and we hope to be able to expand that as long as our money continues to come through from the state and federal government with that next year. Title III are English language learners. As you are very well aware, as our needs continue to grow, our money continues to dwindle from the allotments from the state. So we're expected to do more with less. And so that becomes our continuous struggle, is how do we do more with less when our needs are so great? Our Title IV is a relatively new grant. It just started back in 2018. And with that, we have a lot of flexibility within that grant. It's really about well-rounded students. So we have a lot of flexibility and different things that we can do with that. And I think that's something that we can really expand upon in the years to come as we look at our budget needs and our priorities across the district. Been working very closely with Mr. Farrington at Partnership for the CSI, so the Comprehensive Support and Improvement Low Graduation Rate. And they qualify for that based on their low graduation rate. And the issue with that grant, quite frankly, is that we received the allotment on that on November 28th of this year, for this year. And we have to have that budget turned around to them this week to impact our students this year. So that becomes a continuous struggle with that, yes. So we received about $85,000 each year, and we anticipate around the same amount next year. We're hoping for around the same amount next year. So working really closely with him to plan ahead, not knowing exactly how much is going to come and not knowing when that money is going to drop down to us. That does become a budgeting struggle for Mr. Farrington, but he's been working really closely with our team to have the greatest impact there. So our next steps moving forward, again, across all titles and even throughout CNI, Dr. Green and I have talked extensively about this, is to do a budget analysis to determine the effectiveness of our current initiatives. Are we getting the most bang for our buck there? Complete a comprehensive needs assessment to determine our priorities for 2025. There are a lot of things we want to do, but we can't do them all, so we've got to set our priorities there. And then use the results of this budget analysis and the needs assessment to set our preliminary budgets for next year. And over the summer, I'll be able to come back and have a preliminary budget for all the titles for you. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions, Ms. Molly?
Thank you for this and for all the work that you're doing to make sure we are also, you didn't talk about this, but I know, make sure we're in compliance with all of our federal reporting so that we don't need to give any of that money back. Thank you for that type of work you do too. One question I have is whether you called Title IV a grant, and I wasn't sure, like, are there other federal grants that we have tried competing? Is there other federal money that you are looking at as potential sources for us? Could you just speak a little to that?
Yes, there are some that are out there, competitive grants. So these are entitlement grants, so based off of our numbers. But one is a 21st Century Learning Grant that I know that we have applied for in the past and not received. But that is something that we are looking at again now, actively researching that. We've had a couple meetings on that already, discussing different partnerships and different ways we may be able to launch that again. That's the main one I can think of right now. There are a lot of other different things with STEM and some different things like that that we're looking at, but the main one we're looking at right now is that 21st Century Learning Grant.
Just a real quick clarification. So those are competitive federal grants?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Molly,
Other
you have
people
another
should go next,
question?
so then I'll ask other questions.
Ms. Hauser?
Yeah, I want to also just thank you for this, and you've really you've changed the way we look at the federal grant programs or the title program. So thank you so much for that. And you found us a bunch of money, so that's really exciting. The thing that the sorry thing that your report says is, and you said it, we're expected to do more with less, and there's not nearly enough money coming from these federal programs to serve our kids. We're over half our students are free and reduced lunch. We have nearly 1,000 English language learners in the district and $158,000. That math doesn't work. We just know any one of those math coaches could tell you that math doesn't work. So I just think the onus is going to be on us to figure out what we can do, and hopefully the budget process will help, but it's going to be up to us to find money to serve these kids. And honestly, I'm glad to hear that you're comparing the investment with the outcomes, because the outcomes on these student groups are really unacceptable. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Molly?
Yeah, on that last point about looking at the ROI of the different programs, did you mention that goes beyond the title programs? Because I do think like any of the student populations or any of the particular, whether it's math or any particular subject, like there are a variety of things we're trying, both federally funded and locally and some state. So is that analysis to look at the effectiveness of initiatives, is that beyond the title programs? And that may not be your question.
Yes, the resources that I received through federal programs can be applied to any, and we have talked about within curriculum and instruction, definitely using those same tools as we begin our budget building for next year. So doing the same kind of processes in the spring this year, yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking especially of programs like the NC Ed Corps, which is also like ESSER funded. And so like, are we getting the bang for our buck from that program? If so, how do we find other dollars to support something like that? So.
In response to your question, yes, we're taking a look at the effectiveness of all of our programs, the funding that we're doing for all of our initiatives to see, as Ms. Wagner said, we're getting, our bang for our buck here, and if we need to explore other initiatives that may have greater impact.
This is sort of a point/question, and you can confirm my understanding, but I find the CSI LG interesting when thinking about partnership in particular. I know we've all heard from Mr. Farrington how low graduation rate, on-time graduation, it's kind of a catch-22, but maybe it benefits us because they're getting kind of dinged for people not graduating on time, even if those students are only coming to partnership maybe for their last year or two, and we know he's incredibly compelling and his staff is compelling to nurture students and bring them forward. So they're getting dinged for low graduation rates that they're not fully responsible for. But the flip side is that has resulted in funding for our 2 part-time graduation coaches who are mentoring students at Cedar Ridge and Orange as they maybe go back and forth between the traditional school and partnership. So that's a little bit of a conundrum.
You could have been a fly on the wall with a conversation Mr. Farrington and I had the other day around the same lines, but I look at it as a positive.
Right.
We get this additional funds to help those students. So it is a catch-22, but I'll take it as a win right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. This was most informative. and we appreciate it. Okay, up next, ORED and the redistricting maps and data.
All right, good evening, Chair Purcell, Vice Chair Richmond, members of the board. This evening, as we continue into the reassignment space, Thomas Dudley and Brian Godfrey from ORED are here to discuss fourth draft maps with an emphasis on feedback from the December 4th meeting and the deliverables from that meeting as well. So I'll turn things over to ORED at this time before coming back for additional comment.
Chair Purcell, other members of the board, it's my pleasure to be joining you all again this evening and to be presenting what is the draft 4 of your assignment plan. We'll begin with the 4 pillars of reassignment. This is your board policy 4150, and these are the guiding forces behind your assignment plan. Of course, this is comprised of student achievement, stability, proximity, and operational efficiency. As a quick note, and this is something that's been previously presented, there are 2 sets of capacities that are shown as part of these summary tables accompanying each of the scenarios that you'll see tonight. Those are provided for comparison purposes and additional context. And if you would like to see further detail about these, we have the text here that describes the differences between these. Next, we'll be quickly cycling through what are the drafts 1 through 3 of the assignment plan, and I will skip quickly through to draft 3, which is what you saw previously in that December meeting that Mr. Foster just referred to. Now, the major feedback that we received as it pertains to the draft maps that were presented was, of course, that Churton Grove was split, and we learned that that was not a viable option. And in response to that, we limited the number of sort of additional splits that occurred as part of this additional scenario that you'll see in a minute. An additional item of feedback that we received was a request for some additional information about feeder patterns and how those would be affected as part of a redistricting or reassignment plan. We have additional information about that in the appendix. And of course, a proximity scenario, re-examining and re-updating the proximity scenario, and we'll be exploring that as what we're calling draft 4C. A general note before we proceed about neighborhoods and neighborhood splits. We are aware of where neighborhoods may be connected in certain ways, and there is a difference between truly what is a neighborhood that's contiguous versus how people may feel who live in particular neighborhoods. And it's more difficult for us to be able to capture neighborhood feel, and that is certainly up to interpretation more. So we will then move on to the new scenarios for tonight. Speaking about the terminology here, we have scenarios 4A, 4B, and 4C. And this, as I mentioned, is in response to the feedback that we received back in December. We created these 3 maps. Speaking briefly to the symbology, this is identical to what you've seen before, with the blue lines being the elementary current boundaries and the solid background colors being the proposal. So with the additional new objective of Churton Grove and other neighborhoods being contiguous or all together, where Churton Grove goes determines a lot of the rest of the attendance zones that we see on the eastern side. It's a large development with over 100 elementary school students, and that's with the removal of Hillsborough students. So you can see here in 4A, we have Churton Grove continuing to go to River Park. And with that continuation, you can also see that Pathways then needs to reach down and absorb students from the northern portion of River Park. Big picture of what's going on there is there's overcrowding at River Park, and that will be worsened over time. And Pathways is positioned well to be able to assist that overcrowding that would occur, or that is currently occurring, and that will be exacerbated over time at River Park. And all of this is while also stressing the importance of the other pillars of reassignment. Moving on to the summary information, what I would recommend or just acknowledge here is comparing the scenario tables, the summary information between draft 4A, B, and C. So I'll be referring to this as we go through and look at 4B as well. Next, as I mentioned, Churton Grove is again contiguous in this, and the entire Churton Grove development would then be assigned to Pathways in 4B. That's nearly all that's needed to relieve the long-term overcrowding that would be experienced at Churton Grove, or excuse me, at River Park. Looking at the summary information for this scenario, I believe it's also telling to be able to compare these scenarios back and forth. So the benefit of 4A is the proficiency balancing, which of course we know is one of the 4 pillars. The benefit of 4B is more room at River Park for growth, and that's critical because of the assignment of Collins Ridge to River Park as time goes on. But you can see just a couple of imbalances between the scenario proficiency. So that's simply looking at the end of grade or the course proficiency scores for reading at the 3rd grade level and what we would predict the proficiency would be at each one of these schools given this scenario. I also wanted to stress also the creation and updating of the proximity scenario. That's what we're calling 4C. And to speak briefly to how this is created in the operations research algorithms that we employ as part of our work. The model minimizes student travel distance, the distance in between where those students live and the schools that they attend. And that is, of course, within the constraints of building capacity. So when you look at a school, for example, Pathways, where it is the most northern school, you can see a major reassignment in the western quarter, the upper sort of quarter that is currently the central attendance zone. Because those students are closer to Pathways, would be a large reassignment of students in that portion of the central attendance zone to go to Pathways. The importance of this scenario, as I understand it, and as we've communicated previously, is this is a new sort of, I would call it a baseline understanding as far as if proximity is the pillar that is stressed, this is what this scenario would look like. The intention of this scenario, again, 4C, is not to be as nuanced as the others are, but it's certainly conceptually helpful and I believe also viable as well. The additional information that you see in this table does show some discrepancies in the scenario proficiency. But again, we just wanted to provide this. Before moving on to discussing the high school level, I wanted to just pause and ask if there are any questions pertaining to the elementary school level.
Are you looking for comments too, or just questions? Reactions?
Sorry, comments, questions,
Okay.
absolutely, yes.
Okay, great. So just a couple of things I wanted to note out loud. The first thing I want to note out loud is my personal view as a board member is I would prefer to be giving feedback after the process of the community reassignment committee giving their feedback as a step before it comes to us. But since it is here, I will react to a couple of things. One is that 4C increases the proficiency gap compared to what it is now. And since equalizing student achievement across schools was the top priority for the board, as well as the previous committee and essentially every community stakeholders who weighed in, that doesn't seem like a great path to me. The other thing that I wanted to note is that in 4A, the Fairview neighborhood continues to be split. And that is a lower income, primarily Black and Latino neighborhood. And so I understand that Churton Grove has been addressed there and kept whole, but Fairview has not, and that's of great concern to me. That does not feel viable. Yeah, so I would like to see that addressed.
Ms. Hauser?
I just have a question, and maybe, I don't know if it's for us or for you, but I remember about a year ago or so, we made a decision that Collins Ridge would be assigned to Central. And but the maps, you're now assigning it to River Park, is that what I heard?
That was feedback that we received along the way as part of the process of the back and forth and the different scenarios over time. Yes.
That was, just for background context on Central, that was one of these sort of like island spot redistricting things we did at the time as sort of a patch until we could do a bigger process.
Got it.
That's the background on why they were going there.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. I appreciate the three scenarios and your identifying some of the key, positive change or notice things of what makes those different. And I also echo what Sarah said, that I really feel like the board should be giving feedback after the reassignment committee has done so. And I know that Dr. Merrill has been reconstituting and re-energizing that committee, and so that explains some of the delays. But personally, I would not be comfortable moving forward with a plan without that. A couple of the questions I have that come up, on the one hand, it's understandable to with some of these, that Pathways, for example, as like a northern school, that tends to pull from a broader area because properties are more spread out. How big would their change in like transportation time when it becomes like this really wide area and you have busing for this huge area? So that's one question I have. Another question I have just generally, and this isn't the particular draft, but some of our elementary schools, like Central, for example, that when it gets up to like a utilization of like 98% or something close to 100, I've just been thinking, as reviewing this material, what a drastic change that's going to have to be for building use and staff. And I don't know how and when, and just using Central as an example, like a major overhaul of staffing that would have to happen if a school's enrollment, just about doubles. That's another consideration. So anyway, I appreciate these additional drafts and also would like feedback from the broader community.
Mr. Atherton?
So I agree that I would prefer to hear the committees as well. One of the questions I have is in y'all's tables, as you're doing the projections, like here is, your current, numbers, and then you have a forward-looking projection. The question I have is, one of the things that y'all have provided that isn't in here was the heat maps. And so I'm curious, how do those heat maps play into your future projections versus our current numbers? Because some of the areas that we're looking at moving, I can't tell the numbers from the heat map because we don't physically know what they are. But I wonder if it's going to do what we think it's going to do based on these heat maps that we're seeing, meaning, is it really going to shift X number here or Y number here based on what's currently happening in our district, whether that's the year-round charter schools, whichever. So do y'all, if you don't know off the top of your hand, it's fine to come back, but that's just something was in the back of my mind once I saw the new ones was, okay, we're looking at shifting these and looking at what the heat maps show. How does that play into that table?
So what we do assume is that trends pertaining to, say, charter school students in the draw areas and neighborhoods where they come from, as well as patterns associated with Hillsborough Elementary, we do assume that those patterns will continue. even given reassignment potentially of neighborhoods from one school to another, we do just assume that those trends will continue to perpetuate.
Okay, so y'all just say it's 30 students now, we're going to assume it's going to be 30 students later, or
If 30%.
plus or
But
minus.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Hauser?
Yeah, and I agree with the board on, we really want to hear from the committees. Now we have something to work with. I do have a question, and you've alluded to it, but it says that based on the adjusted capacity numbers, which are the real numbers, the SAFO numbers are not really the numbers. But, right, the adjusted capacity better represent our school capacity, that the district will be over capacity at many schools within several years. And can you explain that? So, it goes to Will's question about the heat, have you factored in charter schools, or what are you assuming about that? What are you assuming on growth, and how far over capacity are these schools going to be in a couple of years, after we've just moved everybody around?
So any longer term data that you see from us certainly includes the impact from residential development, as well as current ADM trends, looking at resident live births, things of those effect. I realize it was fairly vague to include the statement and the capacities information that you referred to, as far as many schools over several years. So to be a little bit more concrete about it, what we would be looking at, or what you are looking at as a district, is using the adjusted capacities that have been presented as part of this. So yes, what we're calling adjusted capacities and adjusted utilization. By those numbers, you have Eflin Cheeks, River Park, New Hope. Those are schools that would be considered over capacity or beyond capacity, overcrowded at this point in time. And certainly, especially in the case that may not be a surprise of Eflin Cheeks, that'll be exacerbated fairly quickly due to the extent of the residential development occurring on the west side of the district.
So the schools that are over capacity now are going to be over capacity in a couple of years after the redistricting, is what you're saying. Essentially, that's what I'm hearing.
So as far as the redistricting goes, and this gets back to even scenario, draft A, what one of the major intentions was, you'll see on these tables room allocated at those schools, specifically River Park and Eflin Cheeks. Now, over time, due to a lack of, for lack of a more technical term, I'll say due to the lack of wiggle room that you have in terms of capacity, those have been whittled away. We've looked at additional scenarios and trying to balance different criteria and different pillars. But that is certainly the case. I mean, just looking at, I'll say draft 4A, just to start off with Eflin Cheeks at 90% capacity, that still doesn't allow much room. Not in a school, not at the classroom level, looking at what it actually takes to program a school. So that was certainly an intention, and looking forward to those projections and what residential development will do to these schools. But again, it's trying to balance these different criteria. That's how we've ended up at, trying to balance these as best as is possible.
Just under, and we have a recommendation, and that's coming from another place that says we need another school, and so I'm just trying to put it all together and understand what we're looking at. That's all. Thank you.
I just had one more thought, which is, and I understand you needed to leave some capacity in River Park for future growth. It sounds like, I don't know how much, but just noting in 4B that you've got New Hope at 99% and River Park next to it at 87%. And River Park already has some kids going to Stand Back, which is where I think the New Hope students go. And so there may be opportunity on that line between those two to adjust a little bit and shift some students to River Park from New Hope. Something to look at. It's not a concrete suggestion, but if one of those schools is at 99% and the other one's at 87%, that may be a place where we want to look at things a little bit.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a generic question. With this stuff we're giving to them, isn't that going to create more maps that come back to us before the committee sees it?
That's not my intent.
No,
It's-
no,
it- yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not, I'm just questioning what I see happening,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm just,
That is not what
I don't see where we end, because we're going to stir until done here, and I don't know if we get to a point where we say, here's some comments back, we step away, but the other generic comment I'm going to say is I'm also concerned is we keep all the maps together and people are getting confused at, hey, this one right here seems strange. And we're like, no, we've said we're not going to do that. So I just want to share, I'm worried that this is going to stir until done if it keeps coming to the board first versus letting our committees do the work and then feed to us. So anyway, said my piece.
Yeah, I'd like to address that. You certainly have made it clear. We have comments regarding getting reassignment committee and public information feedback. Again, the previous 3 drafts, the board has been very, very clear that, wait a minute, we don't want to consider those. On our website, it says that, all right? On the information that you have, it says that. I just want to be clear that now we're in draft 4, all right, that we are in a space that you are now saying, hey, these are sufficient enough to get feedback and review. We're ready to rock and roll in that space to be able to do that with tentative dates for both reassignment committee as well as public information sessions through the months of January and February. Now that we have a draft 4 that is able to get that done. Now, we still want to add, as you just mentioned, well, if we keep making comments for or to make adjustments, well, they will, they can. Yet also we'll get feedback from reassignment committee and public information sessions that would consider those 2 potential comments to do additional adjustments on maps. But I just want to be clear so we can move forward in that space. Hey, we got to set that the board is considering that, hey, you all can review, and we want to go from there. I just want to be able to have that clarity.
I think we need to say that you all do the review of where we are right now and let the people come back on the committee and say to us that we need to see this, or we would like to see this, and then we move forward.
Correct. We're not moving forward until, yeah, absolutely. The moving forward spaces, we still have plenty of time for that. But I just want to be clear that draft 4 are the draft maps that we are putting in front of the reassignment committee, that we're putting in front of public information sessions for them to make comments on that draft 3, not draft 2, not draft 1, that these 3 draft elementary 4 maps that we have currently. Just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, I just don't want the committee to say, oh, well, I heard that the board wants to adjust this one, we shouldn't look at it,
No.
right? So I just want us to agree we're wanting to hear from them before we redo a map, because that's what I'm worried about. It'll always, you come before us, we're going to change it. I'm
On 4.
highly confident, yeah.
On 4.
On 4.
On 4. Got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, and I just think the committee feedback, and I know this is challenging, so I appreciate that it's challenging, but I just think it has to be that broad committee feedback, and I think there have to be multiple opportunities for the committee, because it's not a meaningful committee feedback session if we're only hearing from a segment of the committee. So I realize that that's time consuming, because it's setting up multiple opportunities for diverse members of the committee to really have time to give feedback. So I know that's a challenge, but to me, that's an important challenge to embrace.
No, I totally agree. There are already, again, tentative dates right now for our reassignment committee, multiple opportunities for them to look at and review that we will literally release as soon as, I just wanted to hear that, hey, we're good with draft 4 to be able to release, as well as public information sessions as we go through January and February as well. So we just need to be able to take time to be able to do that and bring it back and say, hey, this is what we're hearing, this is what we're getting, to be for us to move forward.
Is everybody in agreement that the committees are going to look at draft 4 and move forward with that? I guess that's what we need to. Okay.
All right, we're good.
Go
So next
forward.
step, I'll be bringing back comments on draft 4 from both reassignment committee and public information session. So, and definitely appreciate the work that OR continues to do for us in this space.
Yes, thank you for getting these maps to stage 4. Yes, Ms.
I would
Hauser.
just like to ask a question on the high school map. And I'm not trying to change, just trying to understand this, because like you said in the elementary map, you got rid of the islands, the spot zoning, but we didn't, but scenario A still has the islands that are residual from the old spot zoning that we did to balance the high schools. And I was curious why, just curious why you didn't torpedo those.
To be clear, you're referring to high school scenario draft 2, or excuse me, draft 2 scenario A? Is
Yep.
that correct? Okay, let me,
So there's 2 islands on, they're all 3 islands are on the western end of the county, but 2 are pretty far north, and then there's a 3rd one. And I'm just curious why you kept, because you said, there was an attempt to eliminate some of these islands, and I was curious why those were left.
so big picture, I believe one of the major goals was due to the addition at Cedar Ridge and the potential long-term imbalance between the enrollments at Orange High and Cedar Ridge, the general big picture goal was to move students from Orange High into Cedar Ridge, not the opposite direction.
That's what we had done, and that's why we had spot zone, but it seems when I look at your data that the balance is, it's less imbalanced than it was. That's for some reason, the Orange High School numbers have dropped and the Cedar Ridge are going up. And I don't think it's just from the the changes. So I was just curious. Well, we'll see what the committee says. It's just strange. I don't know what that's doing for our transportation, right? Because that looks like a transportation problem. And on this issue of participation, so after the redistricting committee looks at it, then what happens?
We'll bring back feedback from the redistricting committee to the board to hear and evaluate and read and see and make comment from there. The public information sessions will go on as well, and I'll be bringing that same feedback to the board after several sessions for you all to consume.
Well, that's what I really wanted to know is after, is when does the public get engaged, and especially the impacted public? When do they hear, and will they be engaged in person and in community?
The majority of meetings are in person. There will be several virtual meetings, but meetings, well, now that we know that we are good with our drafts for 4C, the tentative dates that we are ready to send will go out next week, and they'll be outlined again weekly in terms of what those dates are.
So does that happen after the committee? So does the committee look at it first, and then it goes to the public, and then it comes back to the board?
That is correct. So the reassignment committee meeting is first. All right, and then the next meeting is a public information session.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for moving forward with this and taking it to the committee. We look forward to hearing. And thank ORED for your continued work. Okay. My agenda back out. Our next item up is for our discussion and action. And we have a resolution that we would like to read. Ms. Shannon Braxton, our CTE director, has been nominated for the CTE Director of the Year. And we have written a resolution to give to her to put with her packet of information, and hope that this will help her moving forward with that honor. So we're going to start tonight, and we're just going to move down. We're going to start with Dr. Moore, and we're going to read this so that everyone can hear it.
Whereas the Orange County Schools Board of Education endeavors to provide opportunities for growth and success for all its students, families, and staff. And whereas Ms. Shannon Braxton consistently builds and fosters relationships with school and district staff, businesses, and community members.
And whereas Mrs. Shannon Braxton was a key member of the CTE ad hoc committee meetings, setting the stage for what CTE is, where OCS CTE currently stands, and where we want OCS CTE to go. And whereas Mrs. Shannon Braxton created a partnership with the Exceptional Children's Services Department of the district and schools to ensure CTE is for all students, and that students with special needs have their needs met correctly according to their individual plans. And
whereas Mrs. Shannon Braxton's leadership increased industry-recognized credentials from less than 5% to 28.4%, and whereas under Mrs. Shannon Braxton's leadership, the Summer Careers Academy became an innovative partnership with Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools, Home Builders Association, and Carolina Across 100, which provided a summer construction program. And whereas Mrs. Shannon Braxton's summer leadership drove an increase in interns within the district, Grow Your Own, as well as an overall increase in student interns throughout the school year. And
whereas Ms. Shannon Braxton's CTE leadership on the Business Advisory Council was first evaluated, then combined with Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools to better serve both districts and align with our business partners, ensuring the right business and the right staff were at the table. And whereas Ms. Shannon Braxton works throughout the district to remove discarded, old, unused, and damaged equipment to ensure our classrooms and labs are industry aligned. And
whereas Mrs. Shannon Braxton works throughout our district to ensure that we are successfully evaluated by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, CTE state staff in monitoring us for compliance review. And whereas Mrs. Shannon Braxton ensures that we have consistent attention to implementing compliant, high-quality CTE programs with the transition of federal requirements from Perkins 4 to 5, and
whereas under Ms. Shannon Braxton's leadership, Orange County Schools was awarded a CTE modernization grant to provide learning modules in health sciences at A.L. Stanback Middle School. And whereas under Ms. Shannon Braxton's leadership, Orange County Schools are strategically using funds to provide the resources, staff training, education, credentials, exams, and upgraded equipment. And
whereas Ms. Shannon Braxton's leadership increased and streamlined marketing of CTE to all families, businesses, and students by promoting and publicizing Orange County Schools' world-class career and technical education programs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Ms. Shannon Braxton is being commended for her leadership and work with the staff, families, students, and the community in always being focused on evolving and creating a world-class CTE program for Orange County Schools. And be it further resolved that the Orange County Schools Board of Education calls forth all members of our school community and our community as a whole to recognize and thank Ms. Shannon Braxton for all her leadership, creative thinking, and engagement in supporting career and technical education for our community. I need
motion to approve.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Resolution is approved. Ms. Shannon Braxton, we appreciate what you do. We hope that you go forward in this process of being our state director. But if you're not, we're fine having you here doing all the work that you're doing to help our students and our district. And so thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, up next, let me find my piece of paper. Our Ombudsman recommendation for approval. Does anyone have anything on that, or am I supposed to have it and I don't? Let me find it. get out of one thing and go to the other.
Well, I'm happy to make a comment if you want me to.
Okay, please do while I'm finding it.
Well, I appreciated reading the different proposals, and there are a number of positive elements of the different ones. I liked the 6-month pilot from the ground up design with the Harmony Strategies group. I like how they laid that out. And the list of higher ed foundation nonprofits that they've worked with, I found to be really substantial.
Okay. Any other comments on these? Oh, Ms. Smiley, I'm sorry, I looked in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I agree. I liked that proposal. I also really liked the McCammon Group proposal for a couple of reasons. One, their alignment to the IOA standards of practice. I think both of them have that, but it's more sort of direct. I found it to be in the McCammon Group proposal. And I also, the particular ombuds that they're proposing, their team member, lives in Gardner, and so is visits to the district would be able to be more frequent. And so I really appreciated that. I will say none of them had substantial K-12 school experience, which really I think would be ideal. But the ombuds, Dina Eisenberg, that they're proposing has some experience developing a curriculum and training middle and high school students in mediation. I mean, there's a little bit of more of a K-12 connection there. So I was sort of leaning towards that one, although I agree, I like the Harmony Group.
Okay. Mr. Atherton.
I was also with the third, leaning towards theirs based on the proximity, and also they did indicate in there that they did have experience with K-12. I don't know if it was the overall program or more just, because the resume, as you said, didn't reflect that, but the overall company stated they did. So I was leaning towards that proposal as well.
And I like the proximity, that was really important to me, so that was.
Proximity is important, I believe. Okay, do we have?
Can I ask just a
Yes, ma'am.
question too? Because I know that ombuds and in some of the other proposals as well, they did have lots of higher ed experience, including for like state university systems. Would similar public records law and stuff apply in different states? So this is a question for Neil. Would they be familiar with the idea of public records and how to appropriately, track their work in order to comply with that?
I think every state has a public records law, and there's a good deal of similarity among many of them. I can, without, which states in particular? Do we know which ones?
Yeah, I mean, the ombuds in the McCammon Group was an ombuds for Ohio State.
Ohio, I'm not familiar with. I know North Carolina's is similar to Florida's and some other states, but all states have public records laws, so I assume any organization that has worked with state government agencies would be familiar, would be at least mindful of the fact that everything is a public record unless it's accepted, for example.
So just to piggyback on that, Sarah, one thing we did in the policy was state that any public information request would have to go through the attorney. So it would be reviewed there as well. So that, I mean, although that's in policy, I think it probably should be in contract as well as the terms. That way we ensure there isn't an accident on what we're trying to intend here. There's a recommendation.
I think a contract, and these are proposals, not contracts, so a contract would have to come back to you. When in working on a contract, I would absolutely make sure that your policy is incorporated and that we highlight certain aspects, including access to staff and access to attorneys and things like that they might need to do their job.
I think some kind of onboarding conversation with you as well to like really walk through that.
Yeah,
I think
that would be
important legal points in that policy, I think.
Be happy to do that.
Can I just, and I'm also supportive of McCammon Group, so I'm not trying to be hard on McCammon Group, but I'm not seeing that they say they're familiar with the culture of academic institutions, including K-12. I'm not seeing a reference where they've actually served as like Ombuds support in K-12. It says Dina understands K-12 education. Well, I mean, so do I. So just want to put that out there, that I don't think it's actually saying that they've worked in K-12, unless I'm missing something.
We had a very difficult time finding any firm that did K-12 work, to be honest. And so we were looking for the connection, however tenuous it might have been.
So I was referring actually to where it says, the person understands K-12. This is like page 2, K-12 education and the school work environment, as well as ongoing challenges faced by teachers and staff. So, but like I said, it doesn't, in the resume, it doesn't reflect that.
Right.
But that's why I said it says it, and it says it, like you said, in a different place as well. But I didn't see the strong connection, but being close proximity, I think, is a real value as well.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to move forward with a contract creation for the McKinnon Group.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay, motion passes.
Dr. Moore, what did you say? No, she
No.
said no.
Okay, one no. Okay. One more item and we're rolling tonight. Okay, Orange High School 1969 basketball state title trophy and basketball transfer to the museum. The museum being the Orange County Museum in downtown Hillsborough. There is a group of people that is working, trying to recognize this basketball championship game. In March of this year, it will be 55 years since they won that. And I am one of the people that is trying to sort of pull things together. And we noticed that there's nothing in the museum that highlights this championship game, the one and only in Orange County schools. And so we thought that it would be fitting to have this trophy and the signed basketball in the museum with maybe some newspaper articles that were written at that time and anything else that we could find to sort of highlight this. But we need permission to move this from the trophy case at Orange High School to the museum. And that needs board approval because we're moving school items. So,
And I think also to add to that, if you had the opportunity to look at the trophy case at Orange High in the gymnasium or next to the gymnasium, it is packed with trophies. And so you really have to know what you're looking for to really see it.
this one's up on the top shelf.
Yeah, so it would kind of free up some room, and it would also give an opportunity for those who've never seen it to be able to go to the museum and observe it.
I would just like to put one item around that if for some reason something happens to the museum, they run out of space, whatever, it comes back to us.
It closes down, it comes back
Right,
to
right.
us.
And not that we want that to happen.
No.
But I would prefer to have an agreement that it doesn't get sold or given away, that we have that opportunity to get it back. But I fully support this.
Okay, we can do that, I do believe. All right, do I have a motion to approve? this?
So motion to approve the transfer with the agreement that we would get it back in the event that something happens, whether it closes or runs out of space.
Second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, we will do that. All right, any other items that we need to discuss tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
Excellent, thank you.